Call the meeting to order for the Westfield Redevelopment Commission for October 13th, 2022. First item on the agenda is declaration of a quorum. John, would you take roll, please?
Yes. Joe Plankus,
Here.
Doug Holtz,
Here.
Jill Doyle,
Here.
Bob Beaudry, Linda Nass.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Before we go any further, I'd like to make a couple adjustments to the agenda. I'd like to move the active battery management and the standby land transfer, those two items, ahead of the overlapping tax unit presentation. So we will move that up to that position. We will also add at the end, after the Grand Park budget approval item, Resolution 13-2022. John, have you got copies? Did you pass out copies for us on that?
I can do that right now.
Yeah,
and
if
will-
you would,
and
please.
And you'll need a vote on the changing of the order.
Yep. So I need a motion for approval of modifying the agenda. I move that we modify the agenda as presented. Do I have a second? Second, Doug Holtz. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. I'll do a quick roll call here. Doug Holtz? Yes. Linda Nass?
Aye.
Joe Plankus? Yes. Jill Doyle?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Bob Beaudry is not here. So we have a 4-0 vote for approving the changes to the agenda. Thank you all. Next item is the approval of the Redevelopment Commission meeting minutes for September 19th, 2022. Any changes or modifications that commission members have for the minutes?
I have one, Mr. President.
Okay,
On page 2, after the first paragraph, during that meeting, I made reference to contract regarding limits and subcontractor safety and so forth. I believe Linda made some comments. I don't know if it was in regard to that contract or not, but there was no resolution to those comments. I would like to add a statement that I believe it was Cam indicated that the contract had not been reviewed by an attorney,
Right.
because failure to add something to that would indicate that nobody cares regarding our comments. So I'd like some statement crafted to that effect.
okay. Let's leave this vote then until the next meeting, and we can make those changes and submit a modified. And John, if you would work with Marla on that to make that addition, that would be appropriate. And then I will remove my motion for approval, and we'll carry this over to the next RDC meeting. Thank you, Doug, for those points.
I just had a change in the, on the second page, under the last bold, the bold heading on the resolution, I think where it says in that last sentence of that second full paragraph where it says finances, actually, we were talking about the project descriptions. And so if we could change financials there and in that next paragraph to project descriptions, because remember there were 11 listed, and that's what I was talking about, that I thought they were broad, and Cam said they're broad. So, let's see if there was anything else.
Let the record show Bob Beaudry arrived at 5:04 p.m.
So we can probably approve these.
Is that all you have in there?
Yeah, with those
Okay,
corrections.
we will
I
make that
think we can
correction
approve.
also. Okay, very good.
So you want me to make a motion to approve with those corrections?
I think you probably should get to table it and then have the corrections.
You'd
that
rather
we have
bring
to
it back
review.
next month?
That'd be a safer,
that would-
that'd be a
Okay.
safer
I
route.
feel more comfortable
Okay.
with that. Okay, we will then move on to the approval of claims. We have no claims. There was a claim submitted, but it was late in the afternoon,
Yeah,
so
there
we'll
were-
let that carry over till the next meeting. We
Yeah,
didn't get
we
it
just
till
got it at 4 o'clock today.
4
so.
o'clock today, so we will carry that over to the next month's claims list. Next item on the agenda then becomes the Active Battery Management Systems Expansion Training Grant. Kai Chuck and Steve Acard. Kai, all yours.
Good afternoon, Commission members. For the record, Kai Chuck, Economic Development Department. I'm here to present the proposed two-year training grant for Aptiv. The city has been approached by Aptiv Westfield Engineering Laboratory, currently located at 17001 Oak Ridge Road, for a potential expansion of their current facility, which was established in 2019. The company has invested over $9 million in capital investment since that time. Currently have over 50 employees currently, at the average wage of over $40 per hour. This new expansion would include 20 new employees with $2 million capital investment at the average wage of about $58 per hour. The company had asked to facilitate this expansion for a 2-year, $75,000 training grant. The grant would help facilitate training and onboarding of the new workforce. The grant would be a reimbursable training grant. Once the training has been occurred, the invoice would become to the city, and the city would reimburse the training. The training grant is only $75,000 for the total of 2 years. I believe any more funds not utilized would be returned to the city for the grant. For representing petitioner tonight, this evening, is Steve Akert from Bose, McKinney & Evans. He will give you some details on the project and the company itself. Both he and myself will be available for questions afterwards.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Kai. Steve?
Members of the Commission, Steve Akert with Bose McKinney & Evans on behalf of Aptiv. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this proposal. And also wanted to thank you, a number of you, I believe, had willingness to come visit the facility to see firsthand the state-of-the-art operations at the facility in Westfield. I also want to thank Mr. Kai Chuck for his responsiveness and professionalism in responding to this. I was asked by the company a little bit late in the game to approach Westfield about this potential expansion. And the responsiveness had a very big impact on the company and the decision to expand here. Project, as we call it, BMS, is the acronym, stands for the Battery Management System. As you may have seen actually at the facility, this is a laboratory and testing facility. The company plans to install on the existing footprint a couple $1 million worth of capital equipment to expand the capability of their testing operations in the battery sphere. They are a very innovative technological company. They will be bringing in, of the new employees, largely PhDs, in addition to engineers, to run the tests and facilitate their interaction with customers. They're on the leading edge of testing on behalf of their customers. So this complements the existing laboratory facilities at this site and would expand it as part of a longer-term growth strategy for Aptiv at this site. That testing includes some sophisticated analysis of battery chemistries, among other things, and how batteries operate under real-world and difficult environments. And so there is production validation that will go into that for OEMs and other customers that would result from this. This was a competitive project on behalf of Aptiv. They looked actively at other sites, including sites outside the state of Indiana, to locate this project. The state of Indiana has also made a proposal for EDGE tax credits to complement this program, this project, and to bring it to Indiana as well. So I'm happy to entertain any questions and appreciate your consideration of the project.
Okay, I just want to state for the record, there were 4 of the commission members were able to visit your facility, and wow, it was really impressive. It is definitely state-of-the-art moving forward in a very dynamic field of battery management, automotive and other applications. So again, this hospitality was great. We really appreciate that, Steve, to get a lowdown on exactly what was taking place and what the plans were. So appreciate that. I'll open up for any commission members that have any questions for Steve or Kai.
I would reiterate, it was an excellent tour. I had no idea that businesses like that existed, let alone existing in Westfield. I think we should feel honored that they considered coming to Westfield. Before I made the visit to Aptiv, I went back and reviewed when I became a commission member a number of years ago. And I went through all of the information and all the material that we were provided. And I wanted to make sure that this is the best use of our dollars from a redevelopment commission standpoint. And one of the goals of the RDC and one of the examples of economic development projects that we should be concerned with is not only economic development incentives, but business attraction and retention and expansion of businesses. So I think the request is very valid, and I think it would be a fine use of commission dollars to grant this request. And again, I applaud the work that they're doing, and I really do appreciate the time that they spent in giving us a tour. It really helped.
Really did. Okay, any other comments? If none, I'm open for a motion for approval.
I have a couple questions.
Oh,
So, Kai, is this business receiving an abatement currently?
Yes,
And they are in a TIF district?
that's correct.
Okay, and did they receive funds from the Indiana Economic Development, the IEDC, connected with this? I thought that's what we were told during our tour.
So
Did I understand that?
The IEDC has offered a $500,000 EDGE tax credit award for this project.
For this particular expansion?
Yes.
Okay, and Kai, do you know where we are on that abatement now? Because they came in 2019, right?
Correct. So they're at year 2 of taking that, so they had 8 more years left on that.
Okay, and
On
is
the
it-
original one.
Is it one of the decreasing ones?
That's correct. They're standard 100%, 10% increments.
Okay, and then you're going to complete the training and then invoice the city, and what fund do we plan to take those monies out of? And will this go before the council because it is monies? Or is it just
This will come from the Grand Park TIF area.
the Grand Junction TIF area?
Grand Junction, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so it really isn't going to be due until 23, 24, into 24 maybe? When are they going to begin this training?
So the training would be completed over the 2-year window. The repayment schedule would largely be set, I don't believe it's been set specifically, would be established in the formal contract for this. So Aptiv has no particular set
my experience
mechanism
in
for that.
and my experience in the past, and I think probably Kai would say the same thing, is because I had that type of a training fund starting a plant down in Greenwood, and generally the reimbursement is made as the invoices come in.
That's correct, but we can tailor it with the company.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
both
if they
satisfactions,
want to do
correct.
it quarterly or something.
Quarterly or annually.
Whatever.
It's whatever.
That would be fine. That wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
And
and it'll
the-
be memorialized in a grant agreement that Steve
Right.
and I can work on, and that way you'd come and see it, and both sides would be able to participate in determining what the proper and feasible path is toward the payback of the
Right.
grant monies.
I mean, we can approve it tonight pending the language that we need to memorialize it.
I think that's right.
Okay.
And does the existing abatement apply to this increase in value there?
No, the existing abatement only applies to the original investment
What
in
it was
2019.
originally? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that we weren't kind of doubling up.
Yeah, to clarify, Aptiv is not asking for an abatement for the 2 million.
Right. And it would not go under that abatement?
No,
that's
the
existing.
original
Okay,
abatement is
just wanted to make
static
sure.
as of the
Good question.
equipment and the real estate at the time.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm open for a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Bob Beaudry. Motion by Jill Doyle. John, please take roll.
Linda Knopf,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, John. Thank you very much, Steve. Good luck to you. If you need anything else, you let us know. Thank you, Kai. Okay, moving on to the next item is the standby land transfer agreement, approval of land sale. Jim Akers here for Birch Dalton tonight. Jim, if you would, let us know what's going on.
Yes, thank you. First, apologizes for not being here. Jim Ake is my name for the record, and I'm representing Edge Rock and their development partners at the Grand Millennium. Tonight before you is an issue. We have current land sale agreements for the medical office building and for the apartment section of the property located there along US 31. And we're asking for a sale of approval pursuant to the agreement we made with you to restructure the finances. And so we have to come to you to ask for your permission to move forward with the sale.
Okay. Commission members, any questions? Okay, open for a motion for approval of those two land sales.
So moved.
Okay, Doug Holtz, motion. Second? I'll second it. Motion by Doug Holtz, second by Joe Plankus for approval of the land sales, two land sales. John, take the roll, please.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Linda Knopf.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Say hello to Birch for us. Next item on the agenda, we'll go back to the overlapping tax unit presentation. John Rogers.
Tonight, we're going to, as per statute, we're going to go through not quickly.
By the way, thank you
So
for
don't say
coming, Ken
quickly.
Alexander, representing the council.
And Brian for the schools. Maybe others.
Sorry,
are-
Brian, didn't mean to ignore you.
In the overlap, this is the annual meeting for the overlapping tax unit presentation. In your packet, you'll see the map, which I used for the cover of this presentation. It should have been uploaded and linked. I think we just have a miscommunication, but we'll get that loaded. The first thing I would draw your attention to is the long-range planning, what we believe the current TIF dollars would be used for in the coming years. And there are several projects, and I felt that this year, like in past years, it seemed like the maps, the illustrations seemed to have a better, more distinct, left you with a more distinct impression of what's going on. So in this case, I think this is also just as sticky to have these visuals of the projects that are potentially on the horizon for the use of those EDA dollars, the Economic Development Area dollars. And this is just a short list of the potentials of the where we will potentially use some of these dollars along with dollars that we're receiving from the state and any other grants that we can get. I'd pause here. Do you have any questions about the potential projects that we're looking at right now? Again, this is just the potential, and until we get a little bit more information about each potential project, the possible funding, MPO dollars, and those types of things, we won't make any decisions until we have a complete picture of what the financing might look like for each of these packages. But these are potentially at the top of the list right now.
We can't put it on the screen and you don't want to read them out, right?
Yeah, well, I can. I can read them out and.
I just thought it might be good for people
Yeah,
listening too.
sure. The Union Square parking garage, that's definitely happening, right? Because we already put that in place. 161st Street and Spring Mill Road roundabout. 156th Street and Ditch Road roundabout. 161st Street tunnel, the Monon Tunnel. And 169th Street Oak Ridge Road roundabout. Those are some projects that are potentially, again, at the top of the list right now. There are several others, but these seem to be the most likely at this point.
Nothing connected to 191st Street.
191st Street right
Design.
now, we're just now starting that process. As many of you are aware, it started here with the approval of the new EDA. That has to go through several other steps, so I left it out.
Okay.
Right, because I didn't want to be too presumptuous.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Well, I just,
There's a number of steps we need for that
Right,
Yeah.
and I
approval. to
I
go
didn't want to
through
get.
the
but it might hit next year,
Yeah,
some of it.
exactly, it very well could.
Okay.
I just don't want to presume or assume that it's a done deal, because it's not.
Okay.
Next is the budget, are the budget numbers you'll see, and several comments that I replied to. But I think the common theme was there was changes in services. The service dollars did increase in each of the budgets, and that was because of what we've seen. We're getting a lot of folks that come in and want to talk about possibly building in one of these areas. Those service charges get paid for out of these EDAs. In this case, I went through and added dollars in the appropriate TIF areas, EDAs, economic development areas, where I felt like we were going to see more activity next year. And at the request of this commission, hopefully this meets what you were expecting. Again, these are my best estimates at this point, but that's the main change you will see in most of these budget sheets between this year and last year.
Well, also reflects the 6 million that we approved for repayment.
That's
to the
correct. Thank
council
you, Joe. Yep,
For the
it
core,
does.
core four that.
Yes, it does.
you
That is
spread it
reflected
around
in
to
here.
Different TIF districts.
Now, and I will add, because I waited until this evening, I will go back and update these with the Aptiv request,
Right.
right? Because again, I didn't want to just jump in.
Right.
But those will come back to you, and as you can see, it'll fit.
Are we asking all of our questions about the budget during this taxing unit presentation?
No,
Okay, I
yeah,
don't
we can
wanna-
save those, for the
Let's save the
budget
questions
presentation.
later
Okay.
Till they
Yeah.
get through it all.
Yep.
Make sure we get the full gist of the
And
concept.
and then the final sheet that, again, I apologize that it's not on the screen, but, and it would be the overlapping tax units, the effect on the overlapping tax unit. That's pretty much the standard sheet that you see in any bond proceed request. And really, that's the presentation. And in total, we find ourselves well-positioned for the growth that we're seeing. I would continue to remind everyone that with the school and the city, we are both managing the tax rate, and it is a declining tax rate. And we're working diligently to divine a glide path that doesn't get out of control and allows us to continue to manage this growth. But again, I met, Brian and I had our monthly meeting today. So, I mean, we're constantly trying to make sure that we're staying on top of that tax rate is going down, and it will continue to go down, both the school and the city. And that has a net effect, even with the growth in AV, on our EDAs.
And one question I want to ask you, John, is you said that the tax rate is declining. When the tax rate goes down, our tax bills do not go down. Is that correct? And under what circumstances would they?
What the city tax rate can fall, and it would not affect a 1%, a homeowner. Their taxes would not go down unless they live in a home that's assessed value is less. Currently, the current tax cap is $175,000. If their house is assessed at less than $175,000, that decrease in the city tax rate would be, they would see that in their tax bill. So
But if you're-
but if their assessed value is, which everybody's is, their assessed value is going up, even if our rate fell and they saw that rate fall on their tax bill would still be going higher because the assessed value is climbing.
Doesn't change the outlay that we have to pay. If your house is $200,000 assessed value, my tax bill
the dollars
depends
coming out
on
of
the
your
assessment.
pocket, the dollars coming out of your pocket are more driven by the assessed value than our tax,
need it, yeah.
than the declining tax rate that we have in place right now.
Okay. Brian, is there anything you want to add to that particular subject?
No, what he said is true.
Okay.
I think our total rate's in the $2, so a decrease unless it's going to drop below a total of $1 is going to change.
Okay, very good.
So you calculate that $175,000 net assessed value. Was that?
Their assessed value.
Yeah, net assessed value.
Yeah.
So that's what you're calculating on, not on the fact that, for example, an average home downtown here, that the value went up 16 to 20%.
The assessment.
I've calculated, so I know
Sure.
if the tax rate goes down a little, those people are still going to have an increase in their tax rates. Did you research what it is, where it kind of evens out?
I'm
With a
not.
lower tax rate and an increased net AV, did you kind of?
Well, that's really what the
Search
tax
that.
cap is telling us. The $175,000 is where you are below what that rate, that 1% rate, that effect of the entire tax rate on the 1%. That's what that calculation is, the tax cap.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, again, I think the commission members need to understand that, if you've got a home that's assessed at $200,000 and the tax rate goes down for the city or even for the school, it's not going to change how much I pay.
I will state that the exception there would be.
The referendum.
The referendum.
That's right.
Thank you.
Because that's
Thank
over
you.
and above the tax rate.
Yeah. And
That
so
will change,
If,
depending on what the citizens do with the referendum itself.
exactly. So that, Brian's got, or the school has
Right.
something in front of the taxpayers right now to do just that. So that referendum, if it falls, you will absolutely see that.
Of course, there's not a lot of homes in Westfield anymore that are at 200,000. There are a lot more than that on average, I would.
So we're using that, I'm just using that as
Yeah.
an example, Bob, for,
So like in, I guess, if you 180 that, if you have a home that's worth 300,000 and it goes up 20% and it's now worth 360, then you're going to pay more, even with the
gonna pay
1%.
higher.
Yeah.
pay a higher
So,
bill.
so you're going to pay more, which means that more of that assessed value capture is going to funnel to the taxing units, schools, library,
Right.
blah, blah, blah,
Correct.
blah.
Yeah.
So, and I think on average, we've seen that happen. I mean, it's a good thing, but especially in Westfield, I mean, I know I've received I was looking over my assessment increase this last tax bill, and I've talked to some of my neighbors. Everyone's have jumped up between 15 and 20%. So there's going to be a definite increase in capture for all the taxing units.
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
it can go the other way too, Bob, because in 2008 and 9 area, when prices of homes were crashing, basically.
Right.
My tax bill went down because my assessed value went down.
Right.
Yeah. Oh,
So
I see
it
that.
can go either way. When you see the tax, when you see the assessed value goes up, you could really say that's a good thing, because that's the people that are wanting to move to Westfield are driving those prices up, and it's a good economy, and consequently, we're going to have to pay more in taxes.
Well, it was a good economy. It's starting.
Well, Washington, all the rest of that's another subject for a different venue. But
So as your value goes up, your tax cap goes up, the amount of tax you're gonna pay is gonna go up, and a little decrease in the tax rate probably still leaves you an increase in your tax bill. That's what most people are calculating, okay? I just wanna be straight about that. I don't know what you're calculating, Brian, but at the school.
maybe step up the microphone if you would, Brian, so we get a record of it, please.
No, I agree with what you're saying on that, and that's where we're at as well. The only comment I would make is, as tax rate goes down and AV goes up, the total pot does increase. So the schools corporation situation in this case, just so we're represented appropriately, our tax bill rate has gone down enough that actually our collections the prior years stayed fairly flat. So while the pot got bigger, our rate dropped enough that our collections did stay roughly
Yeah,
flat.
you kind of evened it, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, we've grown about 14%, while our student population's grown about 17% during that time. So we've tried to mirror our growth as we've gone up, but our rates dropped to 87 cents by the time we get to next calendar year over the last 4 years, so.
And if you look at the net AV that the county puts out, our net AV from last year to this year is almost $1 billion more. It grew because of new things coming in too, not just existing, but a lot of new came in, and people thought maybe they were gonna get a little break here because it did grow so much this year.
So I'd like to
I
ask a
think that's what
question.
people are looking at too.
Since you're up here, I've never had, okay. So here's my thing. And I'm going to take the Osborne Trails EDA that was just created, okay? So as you may be aware, that was mostly based on 55-plus residential, correct? And they're selling them, I guess, as fast as they can build them. So in the creation of that EDA, that's definitely going to impact schools, because it's going to divert the funds away from the taxing units that benefit from that, and it's going to go into the TIF as 100% captured, right?
On our base rate, correct. The referendum does still apply to the TIF
Correct.
areas, but yes.
So I'm curious, if the schools keep coming to the citizens for referendums, how come nobody from the schools is coming up here to us and saying, hey, wait, guys, you know, we need this capture for our schools, instead of waiting until, you know, a referendum's running out to say, hey, we need to continue this referendum because we really need the money. I guess my question is, how come you don't need the money prior to creations of more EDAs, more TIFs, but then you need the money when it comes to renewing the referendum?
Yeah, so I mean, I think to make the statement that we only need the money when the referendum is renewed is completely false. We need the money every year that we go through the process. It's just we have the renewal every 8 years. That's when the conversation occurs. When it comes to TIF, and John can tell you this because we even had this conversation again today, there are reasons why you TIF, and there are purposes for TIF, and there are pros and cons to TIF. And depending on where we're talking about TIF, there's pros and cons from a school district side of how we feel about TIF. TIFing the residential, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of. John knows that. We've had that conversation. I didn't necessarily come here and have that conversation. You were accurate on that. But John and I, as he said, we do meet monthly, and we do have conversations of what's coming down the road. How do we feel about it? How's it going to affect us? We also have conversations of what's the net gain or net benefit of that TIF occurring as well. So those conversations do happen. They may not necessarily happen here. I'll 100% agree with you on that piece, and we can be better at having those here as well as we go through those. I would also say, and you know, I read sometimes comments that are out there of get rid of the TIF, you get rid of the referendum. That's not true. A, legally you can't. B, let's say magically we could wave a wand and all the TIFs went away. I think last time I did the calculation, it probably about $4.5 million we would get in the school system every year. Our referendum's over 8. So as we look at that, could you theoretically say you could cut it in half? That's, you know, fair. Yes, you could. But would it completely eliminate it? No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't eliminate all the needs that we face. We would still have tax caps. Even if we had the referendum in place, we would still have lower funding than the state average if referendum or if TIFs weren't in place as we went through that. So some of those constraints that we still face as a school system would still be there either way.
Yeah, I just, from a resident perspective, I think it would be at least in the school's public interest, you know, as far as the perception that people that maybe don't understand referendums and stuff. Because you got a lot of people here that live in Westfield that are still, they're either retirees on fixed incomes, they're single parents. Yeah, so you know, for a person that's working or maybe in their prime earning years, it's not nearly the impact as it is on maybe someone who's on a fixed income. So I think having those conversations, especially in front of the body that decides on these things, would be important. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's fair, that's fair. And I would just say from the school's perspective, as we work through a lot of these pieces, and not disagreeing with anything you just said, is we've really been very pragmatic and focused on where's our tax rate go over these last few years, because I get it, we are a small piece of that puzzle that makes up that total rate, and us lowering our tax rate 87 cents doesn't get us below $1, doesn't get us below $2, but we feel like we are doing our part to be appropriate stewards of our dollars in that manner, and the referendum is the same way. I mean, John and I often talk, you know, the referendum is a means that the state has established for us to address certain areas. The TIF is a means for, you know, the city to address certain areas of development as well as they go through that. And it's having that cooperative partnership as we work through with each other to try to come to a happy balance so everybody can accomplish their goals, hopefully.
Yeah.
But
I think, you know, schools definitely impact, you know, things like property values. I mean, it's probably one of the reasons we moved to Westfield 15 or so years ago, you know, because of schools. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, so that's it.
Commissioner, I think you hit on a theoretical issue that at least I see across the state, which is, you know, the legislature, in their wisdom, gave us TIFs to be able to help facilitate growth and to a certain extent facilitate competition for growth, which you get bigger companies, more attractive cities, you get more students, and they get a lot of their funding, vast majority of their funding, from ADM counts. And so there's part of that push and pull too, which is a good point.
Yeah, you know, Bob raised some good points. You know, I will say in watching the transition over the last several years, and John working with Brian on a regular basis, they're really hooked at the hip in talking about city and school problems, issues, how we resolve them, how we work together to resolve them. There's a cooperative spirit there that is really very refreshing, and I'm thankful for what that is taking place. I've met with Brian personally on a couple occasions, and I'm impressed with how all these issues are handled between the city and the schools, and it is we're working together to make sure it's for the betterment of the community, both from a schools and in the community overall standpoint. I think that's just great. So I comment. Also, I would suggest to commission members, I took a tour of the schools, high school with Dr. Kaiser last week. Phenomenal what these kids are doing. I'm not going to belabor the meeting here. If you want to talk about it after the meeting, I'd be glad to fill you in. But he has offered, if anybody ever wants to take a tour of the school and see what's going on today in reality, contact him. He's got a cell phone. You can reach him through the school website, and he will show you what they've got going on. It's just phenomenal. I was blown away, quite frankly. But again, that's a discussion for another time. So, okay, any other questions for Brian or John before we go on to, well, we're just going to have this first, and then we'll go on to some other topics before we approve.
Not a
the budget.
question, Brian. I just want to say thank you for your comments, because you may be talking to John every month, but we're not hearing that. So we appreciate this opportunity when you can speak to us and share some of that conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I'm about 3 weeks in of being a resident here officially, so I can
Oh,
come more
you
often.
are? Well, thumbs up to
Moving to Westfield.
you.
Welcome to
Kids
Westfield.
should love it.
It's a shorter drive.
Okay.
Good.
Anything else, John?
I do not. Thank you for your time. And Brian, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open. Ken, we have a council elected official here. Anything you want to add, Ken, or ask about?
Say we all deal with the 1% property tax that sounded great when it was passed, but it's really growing communities. So as we look at all these things, TIF and other things are a way that we have, the tools that we have so that we can live within a 1% property tax. If we weren't growing, it wouldn't be nearly as.
I'm sorry. I don't know who's talking, but we can't hear them at all.
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
just
why
shut
don't you
their
come up?
microphone.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Chris.
Yep, thank you, Chris.
I didn't know there was someone else listening.
Yeah, now look, you've got Chris up.
I'm sorry.
Probably several.
Ken Alexander, Hamilton County Council, Westfield resident. I was just mentioning that we all deal with the 1% property tax. It's something that was put in place and created a lot of issues for local governments, whether it would be the county, the municipal, or the township level. One of the big issues is growing communities have to rely on those property taxes to fund schools and other things, police, fire, and the 1% property taxes have hurt growing communities more than ones that are growing very slowly. So we have to have things like TIF and others to meet the demands of our communities and provide the same level of service that people moved here to support. And so, yeah, everything I'm hearing today is nothing that I haven't seen or heard elsewhere. So no, I think we stay in the course, and while we would all love to have our taxes go down, there's implications to that as well. But if we could go back to those people at the State House and let them understand how difficult it is for places like Westfield and others who are also getting hammered by not being paid as much per student, that would be another issue that we could always address as well. But no, I'm thankful for you guys and your service.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Appreciate your comments. Okay, anything else, John, on that item?
I think I'm done.
If not, we'll move on to Matt Trinian and the Grand Park user agreements.
Good evening, Commission members. Matt Trinian for the record, Grand Park. For this cycle of user agreements, all of the agreements that I had sent over are standard use agreements with the exception of one. That was the executed turf replacement agreement with the comments and edits that were reviewed by Cam. Moats was all in favor of those edits, and all edits were made ahead of the signing of that agreement. But I looped it into this poll just to ensure that everyone got a copy and had the ability to review. But that was executed, and we are excited to start that project this December. With that, I'll take any questions about the user agreements and go from there.
Okay, any questions for Matt on user agreements? Okay, if not, I'm open for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay, motion Doug Holtz, second. Joe Plankus. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. John, if you'll take roll call, please. Joe Plankus. Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye.
Doug Holtz.
Aye.
Jill Doyle.
Aye.
Bob Beaudry. Linda Nas.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the third quarter Grand Park report. Matt?
Again, Matt Trinian here. On the phone with me is William Knox and Blake Hibbler. Unfortunately, they are unable to attend in person tonight, but are on the phone as they're attending to some family needs, some games and practices of their families. But they are on the phone, and will present their portion of this presentation as they have for Q1 and Q2. Q3 was another great quarter for us. As we break down these statistics, it's important to note that these are direct statistics with quarter 3 alone. So it's important to note that we're seeing a really good year from a visitor visit standpoint. Year to date, we're at about 3.2 million visits to the campus, which we're trending towards one of the largest visitor visits count for the campus's lifetime. I always like to show that data. Also wanted to give you an update from a financial perspective, what quarter 3 looked like from a revenue and expenditure standpoint. So as you can see, it was a really good revenue month for us. Important to note that a lot of our hotel revenues hit in quarter 3. A significant amount hit in quarter 3. So that's why we have a lot, see that significant uptick. And I do think it's important to note that year to date, as of year to date, we're about $1.6 million surplus for the campus as we continue to move through. As we've done in the past, I always feel it's important to update you on the individual department units that we have within the Grand Park team that I manage. As you see, there's a pretty consistent theme here that really heavy emphasis on Colts training camp, as that takes up really the bulk of the year, but specifically when we're looking at quarter 3, it takes up all of July and just about all of August, and we recap in September. So heavy emphasis from several of our departments from that aspect, as everyone plays a large role in making sure that that's the best training camp in the NFL, and we're proud to have them here. Along those lines, Rachel and I had a great opportunity to go to Purdue University for their hospitality summit that they hosted recently. Got to listen to some national leaders when it comes to tourism and hospitality, and really enjoyed our visit there. And then, as we will discuss here in a little bit, from an administrative standpoint, there was a heavy focus on the 2023 Grand Park budget throughout the quarter. From a visitor experience standpoint, I think it's important to highlight that we still are receiving really high satisfaction rates from a playability and staff standpoint. Really proud of that our team is conducting themselves well with all of our visitors and clients. From our grounds perspective, really astonishing number that we painted about 500 fields in the quarter alone. We're getting close to the 1,000 field mark for the year, and it's amazing what we've been able to do with our 2 autonomous painters to allow our staff to be efficient on the field. It is also important to note that we've started the process in creating an on-site nursery for field care. So commonly when we host lacrosse events, we'll see a lot of high wear areas in the creases and the face-off areas. What we had done in the past is remove sections of grass from corners of our fields, and it was serviceable, but it didn't quite present the best look to our visitors. So we have a section on campus that we have worked through to create a nursery on site, about 30,000 square feet of space to be able to accommodate those areas as we move forward. So really proud of our team working on that to keep us playing at a high rate. From a client services perspective, it's important to note that we're continuing to get new event activity into the facility, and with that, there's a heavy emphasis from a client services perspective to ensure that they are up to date on all of our rules, policies, procedures, and we get a good common feel for what they need out of the facility before they come on site. So our client services team has been working really hard to make sure that our event base is well informed before they arrive on site. From a facility standpoint, I just want to note that we made some improvements to Lot H. There was a pretty nasty drainage failure on the east side of Lot H, and Steve Helder and his team worked to install a concrete curb, essentially, to eliminate the erosion that was happening on that east side of the lot. And Blake Hill would be the first to tell you that we looked at that a few times, and we were worried that a car might fall into some of that area. So really important to get that fixed for not only vehicle safety, but most importantly, personal safety. And then commonly in Q3, we do our annual inspections and fire drills and all that fun stuff to make sure we're compliant with the state. And then from an operational standpoint, Q3, we saw a lot of indoor non-sporting activity, and we had a cycle of time where we had an over 24-hour service where I think I talked about it at one of our previous meetings, but we had staff on site for over a 24-hour period to ensure that the field flip occurred between one event to the next, and really want to make sure that we have a strong presence there to ensure that those event bases are treating the facility properly, and we have a person on site to ensure that we can answer any questions that they have. And then it seems like a really long time ago, but our staff has a heavy emphasis in the support of Westfield Rocks the Fourth. That's at the very beginning of Q3, but we do a really great job of collaborating with Westfield Welcome to produce that event. And I say produce, our team is the facility operator at that point. The Westfield Welcome team does all the preparation of that event. They collaborate with us on best operational measures to ensure that it's a safe event and really a neat event for the community. So wanted to point out those items amongst the several other things listed from a department update. And what I'll do now is shift it to William, and then at the end I'll be available for any questions that you have regarding the Q3 report. So William, I'll flip it to you here.
Yeah, and I apologize for not being there in person. Fortunately for me, I get to live my work, so I'm actually here with my fifth grade son and his football team for preparing to do a practice and a scrimmage game. But as it relates to Q3, as Matt mentioned earlier, Q3 yet again was another strong quarter for us for the year. From a visitor count, we're trending all in the right directions, as you can see from this chart here and the following slide. These are all of our visitor counts year to date as well as for the third quarter. So we're going in the right direction. Again, we're figuring out our new normal post our COVID boom is what I call it. But things are still rebounding really well and trending in the right direction. You can scroll up again. In the quarter, we brought in just under $1 million worth of business. Those are some of the clients that represent that business below. We had a few new users to the park, which is always great. We're hopeful that we'll be able to secure those groups long-term for multi-year agreements. There's a company out, and it's listed here at the bottom, called 3-Step. And they are a sports management company that is out purchasing other smaller sporting events. So I know you've heard Matt talk a lot about NXT, one of the largest lacrosse producers in the country, came to us. Actually, they came to us during my time at Hamilton County Tourism, so quite a while ago, and have continued to grow their events at the park. They were recently purchased by 3-Step, as well as another one of our groups that we hosted for the first time last year, Academy Volleyball. So this is one user that's starting to kind of purchase these smaller event operators. And one of the things we always knew what would happen post-COVID, there was going to be this mass consolidation, and we're starting to see it at the park level, which is really unique. You can scroll up again, Matt. Social media, we spent a lot of time making sure that the social channels are managed and all the things that are happening there are done in an appropriate manner. We've had a few conversations as of late about the website, and I believe we're going to be working with the communications team and Matt to convert our website to a more user-friendly platform that will allow us to have potentially more sponsorable assets and just a better presence overall from a digital standpoint. So we're excited about that. On the sponsorship front, we're still kind of trending in the right direction. Anytime we can add $1 to this number, we're doing something right. So in the quarter, we brought on about 33,000, and those are some of the sponsors. Some have renewed, some are new. So Mystic River, Mystic Waters, Scouters Pro, and MetroNet are all new, and we were able to renew the Carmel Center Cities advertising for the park as well. So I'm pretty excited to start pulling together because we've already started to do some work on the end of the year reporting and that Q4 report, and I'll get with Matt to get an understanding of when we'll present that. But again, I think that there's a positive transition related to what we did this year. I see even more positives for next year. We're going to have our challenges, which we'll speak about here in a few months. The additional inventory that's coming online, not only in central Indiana, but in the region, is going to continue to put pressure on us to really produce and perform at a high level. So Matt's team, the boots on the ground will be critically important. Blake's team, the guys that are in the dirt, literally in the dirt executing events will be very important because that's what makes the memories for these teams and makes them want to come back. So I will leave it there and either answer questions now or if we can take questions at the end once Blake is done.
If it's all right, we'll just continue on and then
Yeah,
we'll do
let's move
questions at
on,
the
and
end.
then if we have questions, we can get back with William and/or yourself, Matt.
All righty, Blake, it's your turn.
Yep, I apologize. I'm 2 minutes away at my son's Halloween fundraiser for baseball, so I'm not far, but couldn't make it tonight. So I appreciate the time. Quarter 3 for us. I also cannot see the slides. I need on them, so if I go out of order, I apologize. We had our first Alliance Softball National. It was a huge hit. That was the last week of July. It is coming back in 23 and in 24. It was a free rotation age groups. They rotated the age groups through Grand Park. They have since changed that after our success this year, and they took it down to 2. So now just be us and California. So it was originally us, Oklahoma, and California. So they got rid of the Oklahoma location, which was huge for us. It'll keep more teams. They also moved it back a week into August, which our hoteliers will probably like. Kind of adds another week onto our season. We'll be able to fill their whole with a different baseball event and add the softball. Our ABC tournaments, which has won the Economic Impact Award of the Year for small market the last 3 years, was bigger this year again. We're at a point where we're actually evaluating ways to increase the number of teams. We are maxed out in that series with Kokomo included. So we'll actually be coming back next month to present a potential idea on how we can expand Grand Park. So we're excited about that. August is kind of a dead month for us in Q3. We use that month to put everything back together. So we resod every field in the wear and tear areas. We redo all the turf. So pretty normal stuff. The umpire locker room was actually under budget. So what we kind of proposed, I think we came under almost by 25 or 30%. So I know usually that's not common right now. So we also fixed multiple drainage areas within the common areas through August, problems that we've had since the start of the park. So you'll see several areas that have now rocked and been put drains in, and redoing a lot of drainage areas that have been problems since the beginning. We went up in teams in Q3 by 25% from last year, which will be kind of illustrated in the next slide. Our visitors continue to be lower than where they were in COVID. That's reflected in the visitors and visits. By us increasing the number of teams, we didn't see, to the outside world, it looks a little more flat. But it is something we're noticing. And then that's reflected by the visitors per team continuing to kind of go down. So you'll see our teams and games are up since COVID, but the visitors are slightly down. As we kind of turn into Q4, our 2023 schedule release 4 days later than last year. We are continuing to kind of register at a much quicker pace than normal. So that's a good sign of what's to come in 23 with the, kind of with where the economic state is right now. There's a little uncertainty. We feel good that, teams are registering earlier and earlier, and we're getting more participation in our registration. 2023 capital improvement plan. We're going to be coming back with a little more updated capital improvement for the park. We're working with Matt too on some of the smaller things to get done. One of the items that we talked about earlier, one of the ways that we think we could expand the park is add lights to our high school fields. We're finishing up a cost analysis and economic impact, the real dollars to the city, because, as we increase teams, obviously the city makes more revenue off of, different revenue streams that we share in. And we're also working on telling our story more throughout the city, throughout the nation. It's our time to start pushing to be more of a, nationally recognized brand throughout, and want to continue to tell Bullpen's story. So you'll start to see a lot more marketing campaigns done on us. The park is beginning to show its age, so Q4 is going to be really important for us to put the park back together, whether that be through painting or ceiling or concrete work, just little things that need to be done. We've gotten, it's starting to show it. And we're working towards, in Q4, we should have you probably remember an LOI that we did with the council. Parts of that are getting worked into a contractual form with WISI to actualize those with the recent article. We had started this, a couple of months ago working with them. So just want to kind of keep you up to date that we will be under a long-term contract, or our goal is to be under a long-term contract with WISI by the end of Q4 to ensure that they are, as long as we're there and we're part of the park, they'll be one of our best partners. So that's probably one of the major accomplishments for us to get done in Q4. I think that's it for us.
Okay, commission member questions for any of the three musketeers here tonight?
I have a few.
Go ahead, Bob.
My first question, this is on the budget related here, and I may be off, but is there a line item here that shows the the revenues received from the additional hotel rooms, like from the Kokomo Fields that were added, I think, we're supposed to benefit, is that included here?
Yeah, so we receive a report. It's not in that because I believe that's just expenditures. But
okay.
from a revenue standpoint, we receive a quarterly update from Site Search. Actually got it today, and it's through the end of August, and it has the revenues through the end of August. It does encapsulate those hotel room nights, but it does not break them out. So I can ask Site Search if that's something that they're able to do for us to be able to show the differential in the teams added due to the Kokomo edition. But I currently just have a flat revenue line from Site Search directly.
I think that'd be important for us to see, just.
So Matt, what we can do there, just because I'm intimately familiar with how this works, what we could do is show, because Blake can give us a direct number of teams that were added as a result of Kokomo. From that, we can extrapolate the average number of rooms those teams would have, and then provide that detail to you. It will not be exact. As a result, the way that we did the partnership with Bullpen, they use Kokomo, and Blake can speak to this, as an extension of Grant Park. So it's not a separate tournament that they run most often. It's just an extension of. So it would be very difficult to get exact numbers, but I guarantee you we can get within 5 or 10% of the overall total.
I think that would be very helpful.
We added.
Okay.
We added roughly 1,200 teams to the events, and we operated a 60% out-of-state ratio. You can probably do the math and figure out what that means from a hotel perspective based on, hotel room nights actualized or, on an average per team. That's probably the best way to figure it out. So, and I can provide
we can do that exercise.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
All right. And then as far as this is on the Q3 update, but it's going to spill into the budget. So I'm going to try to keep it separate. But under the Q3 update, under administration, it says, welcome 2 full-time members, 3 part-time members, and 4 seasonal members. Those are additions to your staff, right?
A lot of them are replacements. So in this current environment, we are losing staff very quickly to either better opportunities or higher pay for what I would consider maybe not better jobs, but they are looking for better pay. It's a tough environment right now, but we're managing. So that number is not in addition to. It's a lot of it is replacement.
I was going to say, because I was looking at the turnover, I went back, I looked Q1, Q2 got a 3, because you added 3 Q1, 2 in Q2.
Yep, you're seeing a lot of transition of staff.
Yeah, so that's just replacing people that have left.
Correct.
Okay, that answers that question. Thanks.
And a lot of in Q3, there are a lot of seasonal employees that are,
they come and go.
They say terminated. They're not fired, but they go back to school and they're done at that point.
Okay.
So can I ask the 3 of you, and I think, William, you told us you were working on data and stuff, but with these visitor numbers down considerably, not the games or the teams, but the visitors, what impact is that having as far as our hotels, our restaurants, our food and beverage tax, everything else? Are you kind of looking at that?
Yeah, I'd be careful in how I would word that, because I don't think our visitor count is down. Our visitor count per team is down. We're actually seeing an influx in teams. So we have more teams.
So we're seeing it in that group rather than this group. It's kind of balancing it off, the teams versus the visitors.
Correct. William, you're trying to say something? I'll let you speak.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, I just want everybody to be mindful. As I mentioned earlier, we're still getting back to normalized numbers after the COVID boom. So anything that we did in 2021, I'm going to state is an anomaly. There were, half of the U.S. population was working remotely or not working at all and had more of an opportunity to travel with their families. So we enjoyed that bump. But if you look at the numbers, they're still higher than where we were in 2019. So we're still on an upward trajectory for the most part. Now, to Blake's point, his team numbers are up, but the people visiting with those teams, so on average, we get 2.3 visitors per athlete. We probably went up to about 3.5 during COVID. Have we come back down to that 2.3 or a little lighter? More than likely, but and Blake could probably speak to that from the Diamond side. But from the overall standpoint, yes, that's less hotel rooms, less concession sales, on and on and on. But I think it's still in line with where we were before we hit COVID.
Good,
And I will say
good
this with
explanation.
COVID, and I'm sure I speak for both you guys too. We replaced events we moved events from March to August. So our Q3 numbers, we did not shut down in August, or did not, like August was a play month for us. So April became August. So like our COVID year was inflated. So you always have to kind of take that into consideration when you look at it. So I think we were better than last year. We are seeing less people come, per player. That could be gas. That could be, going back to work. That could be inflation. That could be all sorts of things. But I think when you see our hotel numbers compared to last year, you're going to be like, oh, those continue to increase significantly.
Yeah.
And we'll report this
Yeah,
at the end of the year, but I think what we're going to see is our visits count will be up and our visitor count will be up, but we have a significant increase in teams resulting in that happening. And I think we're seeing, as our hotel numbers continue to come through, we're seeing that pick up to the rates that we had anticipated for 2022.
A question for Blake. How do we capture, or do we capture the visitors in regards to WYSI?
They are, so we use, we use, different tracking devices. So they're captured inside of our, visitor reports. When we do it, if we were to do it specific to weekday play, we would have to take the overall number and make some assumptions based on WYSI and their visits and things like that. We also track how many local visits there are to the park on a daily basis, so we can kind of gauge how many of those people are from the city of Westfield versus, outside the city.
Okay.
Outside 50 miles, 35 miles.
Okay, answers the question. Thank you, Blake.
Good.
Okay, I'm sorry, Linda, you have some more?
No, that's fine. I
Okay,
appreciated
Jill,
the.
anything? Doug?
Nope, good.
Okay, very, very good. Okay, next item is the Grand Park budget. Matt again.
All righty. Well, I wanted to start this discussion off with a few pieces of information in light of what has encompassed us over the last week. It is important to note, and I think it was explained by Cam, that although budget approved by RDC, the Grand Park staff will follow the determination that the council makes in regards to staff additions, cost of living increases, so on and so forth. And given that that decision has not been officially made yet, I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page, that is something that as we progress with our budget, that is something that we are prepared to do from a Grand Park perspective. Along those lines, I know dating back to the September meeting through today, very minimal questions. Unfortunately, I did see the email that came today, this afternoon, and didn't have any time to review as I was at a meeting at 56th Street with the Colts. I'd love to be able to spend more time and be able to answer those questions. As I skimmed some of those, I feel like the statement of, as we evaluate the budget at Grand Park, the stance that I've taken is I don't want to spend until I know that we have the dollars accounted for. And I think it's important to note, you all are well versed with this, but we're not receiving tax dollars to operate the facility. So I want to make sure that our revenues are outpacing our expenditures. So there are certain lines within our budget that I've yet to tap into because I was waiting on those dollars to be there. I've been meeting with the team this week, and there are a handful of projects coming on board that will start to dip into some of those categories that have not been allocated quite yet. But I think it's important to note that I've tried to be really responsible with the budget this year and make sure that we had the revenues to take on the expenses of some of those larger items. And so I wanted to make sure I made note of that. Outside of that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have at this point. And I wanted to make sure that I shared the message earlier regarding the the sentiments of what's coming through council and how we will act once those come through. So beyond that, I'll take any questions and try to provide as much clarity as I can at this point.
Okay, questions for Matt?
Yeah. Under your proposed increases, one of them is for custodial, and I'm guessing that's okay, so that's 164,000. Is that replacing like your staff that's currently filling that role, or who's filling that role currently?
Yeah, it's a great question. As we started the 2022 calendar year, the goal was to try and take that in-house and do that with the staff that we had on board. Whether that be, we actually hired a gal to assist in that area, along with spreading that workload within our operations department. What we found is that is not the best operating scenario, and I think, I honestly think we've lost some staff because some of that initiative, and I don't take that lightly because we've lost really good people. And I've struggled with that a lot. But I've made that transition, and we've seen a lot of those increases as it is a service that we pay for. And we've made sure that we're getting the appropriate coverage to ensure that our standard is kept. And the standard is something that, again, we don't take lightly at all. So it's that balancing act. Ideally, and most efficiently, I think it would be done in-house. But recruiting the talent at the dollar amount that I'm able to at this point is not possible. We haven't seen success there. So I've gone the outsourcing route and have had to pay more for that.
Okay, and I was going over some of the salary and benefits on your expense report, like your budget for this year and proposed for next year, and things like, do these 2023 numbers take into account, I'm guessing are they taking out if you added 2 more people? Because I was looking at it, it's like, I was staggered, your health and dental benefit is increasing 101%, your perf 42%, campus salary 22%, workman's comp's gonna go up 30%, and that was just for the outdoor, and then you got the indoor, which is minimal, but basically your salary benefit increase is about $273,000. And then
yeah, so what we have done is there's a formula of sorts that we plug in to accommodate the base salary and therefore the output of the benefits that individual would receive. Because for some of the scenarios, we don't know whether that person will elect to take on those benefits or not. We've worked really closely to establish a median cost to take that on. And that accounts for all staff if they were to take our benefit package to ensure that we were properly covered. So that is just a ratio, or I'm sorry, a ratio of base salary to the benefit package associated with that to get those line items. When it comes to salary, that's encompassing the new staff members that I've asked for, along with cost of living, a director.
That's what I was wondering, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So all of those fall within that line. And I think just because you brought it up, and I want to make sure that I'm reporting, I did pull quick numbers because I knew salary was something that somewhat is a topic of discussion. For 2022 specifically, year to date, our budget that was approved is just under $900,000, $889,000 and some change. To date, we've spent a little over $637,000 of that, so we will come in under budget on staff. Some of that is because we've had members leave and we have open positions, and but even without that, we were going to come in under budget. I felt like that was important to note as well.
But you got like 7 or 8 different accounts here that you think might go over budget.
In the current budget?
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
Which will...
You're right. Services, the water sewer line, the consulting line is exceeded. Completely agree. And again, that's why I want to make sure that we're covering our base operations before we do some of these external improvements, again, with the common goal of making sure that our base standard of operations is covered.
I think it's important to, when you look at this, like your new staff additions that you want to add, it's important to figure in the benefits per dental like
Absolutely.
that, because it adds up and that impacts your budget. So
I absolutely agree.
A $52,000 salary position with all the benefits equates to about 96 and some change.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, yeah, okay. Thank you.
And that was, just to further that, that is accounted for in the 2023 budget as it's presented.
All right.
I think it's important, and Bob raises some good points, but I also think it's important that we recognize that the competition is getting tougher, and the standards that we have to provide to stay ahead of that competition is going to require some additional funds in order to help manpower to support that. By the same token, we also have all of the costs covered by the revenue coming in, and I think you've managed that well, Matt, for Grant Park, and it's not taxpayer dollars because we've shifted those costs from the city to Grant Park and the revenue stream that's paying for those expenses going forward.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate those comments, and it's not a one-man job. The staff has done a tremendous job. Our maintenance team has done exceptional in managing their budget line. I do think it's important to note, as William stated a little bit earlier, as we see more competition, it's the staff that makes the difference. And fortunately, as you saw in our Q3 review, we're getting higher marks there. But as, again, in the same breath, we're seeing good people leave, and that's really tough. I'm a people person, and seeing good talent leave is not easy.
That's the toughest part of a manager's job.
It's a competition. I mean, I think we're seeing that across the board in every industry. I mean, I've seen it, you know, in my business and some of my friends. I mean, the competition for labor right now is fierce.
Absolutely.
And people are paying more and more to get good help. And so it's just driving prices up on everything, so.
The unfortunate part,
Yeah.
I agree, the unfortunate part is as you drive to Grant Park, you pass certain restaurants that have their hourly cost plastered on the exterior of their building. And at some points, that exterior cost is the same for what I'm paying for an entry-level position. And I do demand a lot of our staff because I hold them to a high expectation. So
Right.
I completely agree.
And you don't provide any free meals then either, man. Anyway.
I try to, but yeah.
I understand. Just a little humor there.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions from council?
Yeah, I'd like to get through some of these comments since we didn't get together before this. But for example, I'm looking, let's look down at the indoor where you have an account called Sidewalks and Paths.
Yep.
And last year, or for this year, we had a budget of $250,000, but you've only spent, as of the end of September, like $1,900. Do you
Yeah.
plan to spend anything in that budget?
Absolutely. That's one of
And
those.
what is that?
That's one of those projects that, again, I was waiting to make sure our revenues were
Okay.
there to be able to provide. Yeah, there's some concrete work around the event center that I want to make sure that we are upgrading and taking care of as a part of the facility.
Okay, so $250,000, and then now next year, you have that budget at $150,000, so you still
Right.
have more plans for next year?
Correct, yeah.
This isn't gonna cover it?
This covers not only additions to, but also I want to make sure that I have the budget there to accommodate any damages that may come up, that may happen to the facility. So I want to make sure that I have that budgeted for to take care of those responsibilities.
Okay, and for example, computer equipment and equipment, like in 2021, we had $75,000 for computer equipment, and you didn't spend nearly that much. You spent
I'm guessing it's
about
equipment.
$8,000. So
I can speak that if you want. I can speak to that because I hate putting you in this position, Mr. Trinian, because a lot of those numbers are driven by me early on. But Linda, and I'll just say this and then I'll pause and I can answer any other questions. As Matt has mentioned, the way that we've driven the budget historically, because we're in a municipal budget structure, but we operate more as an independent private company, we've put we've allocated the revenue and the expenses such that when we needed to spend it, we could, because we did not want to come back in for additional appropriations and things of that such. So on the revenue side, we were able to be a little more aggressive, and on the expense side, because my philosophy and now Matt's philosophy is, all right, we're going to budget, but we're not going to tackle some of these major capital intensive projects until we know we're good on the revenue side. So that line that you're speaking to specifically on the equipment we had proposed to purchase TVs to help with the sponsorship. We actually just purchased them this past year. That did not happen because we have additional expenses in another line that was going to go over. So when you're looking at the budget, we look at it as a whole, and try our best to take into consideration the lines, but the budget as a whole is how we view it. So if there are issues on the outdoor assets where we need to shift our strategy and dedicate funds there, we were able to do that. So I just wanted to make sure, because Matt is doing this budget for the first time himself and has done a fantastic job. I just don't want him to pay for the sins of the past.
I also just want to make a point of clarification that there are two separate lines, computer equipment and equipment in
Yes,
general.
they're two separate lines.
Equipment in general, the reason why that is so much higher is because we have allocated dollars there for additional golf carts, or I don't even like saying golf carts because we have a great partnership with McAllister. It's
Right.
really there for utility vehicles for our staff. Last year, we were able to purchase another forklift to be more efficient on site. So again, I can't stress this enough. I want to make sure that we have our revenues there to allow ourselves to purchase that. The nice to haves is what I'd call, and that's why that budget hadn't been hit yet.
When you're talking revenues, are you talking cash flows? You want to make sure that the cash flow is there
Correct.
to
Correct.
expend it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, to that point.
Yeah, but what I'm looking at is, some of these have a pretty hefty budget amount, and then you didn't spend it in '21, then you didn't really spend it in '22 yet, maybe some of it you will, but we still have a pretty large number on some of these accounts into 2023. So I'm just wondering how you're calculating the need and the specific plan for those funds. That's
Certainly.
what I'm asking.
And to that point, I think it's important to note that, again, we pulled this document today, but for revenues, we're at about 73% of our budget hit, and for expenditures, we're at 57% hit of our budget hit. And again, that's where we're looking at it as a whole. And again, I really wanted to be mindful, to William's point, first time operating this budget, I really wanted to be mindful that we were capturing our cash or our revenues before we were spending.
Well,
I'd hate to go into all these and.
No, you have to follow
the
cash
staff-
flow, because you can't write checks.
The staff would love it if I turned all them loose and said, go ahead and spend it.
Yeah.
Commonly they get mad at me for saying no. So I've wanted to be very mindful as we work through this budget.
Okay, and I saw some significant increases like on some of the utilities, like water and sewer.
Yep.
You've gotten rates and you're estimating those, right? Because this year kind of
that was one of the
overwhelmed
points.
us.
Yeah, that's one of that was one of the points that I wanted to bring up when I did the introduction, that we have superseded that budget amount significantly, and I've tried to right side that for the 2023 budget.
Okay.
And I believe that was an error in the budget amount for 2022.
Oh, okay. All right, and let's see if there's any others of these. And for example, on electric, and you talked earlier about painting, we're starting to charge more for some of those things. So we do have some revenues to offset some of these increased costs, correct?
That is the initiative that we have taken on, yes.
And then when you were talking about some of the things that you were going to do, like starting up that nursery and, painting these fields and all, do we have that equipment on hand to do that? Is that something you're going to have to acquire?
So the bulk of that equipment we had in-house.
You do? Okay.
Any equipment that we needed outside of the standard equipment we have, we have a great relationship with McAllister, where we have a significant reduction in rental rates.
Yeah, okay.
And that's a credit to William and his team to pulling that agreement together so that we can have that efficiency and be mindful of those budget items.
Okay. And it looked like actually that your health and dental and all that was, was kind of not relative to last year. So you were explaining that a little earlier, but I'm not sure I understood exactly how that worked. Because this year, whatever, I just saw, you know, some changes in that, but I think you explained that earlier, that you were calculating it, like, for example, here's the line. FICA and Medicare for 2022 was let's see, 20,000, and we've got it budgeted for 23 at 8,856. Does that sound right? And perf is, this year was 27,575, and for 23, you've got that at 16,041. So although payroll was going up,
So I think you're looking at the indoor budget for those pieces. There's significant reduction in staff. Candidly, I'm the only person that falls within the,
but the payroll number is higher this year than it was last year, and I'm seeing that number go down. So I was just questioning that.
the payroll
Last year's
number.
payroll was 104,998 budget, and you've got the budgeted. This year it's 115,500, but these other expenses are considerably down to how we budgeted.
I think
last
it's
year.
right siding
Not
that.
necessarily how we paid it, but,
It was the right siding of those formulas.
okay.
It may have been,
I
and
just
again,
wanted you to tell me what you were
Yeah,
looking
it-
at and thinking.
I'm gonna make the assumption, and William, you can correct me.
Okay.
I'm gonna make the assumption when the LSG agreement was created,
Yeah.
the immediate thought was to strike the salary lines and
Yeah.
not go back through the health and dental and those lines. Again, I'm making an assumption
Okay,
there.
all right.
But the 2023 would match the expectation of the formula for one staff member.
Okay, and then when this is budgeted for the consulting and per Williams' agreement for this year now, this coming year, it should be 675,474. You've budgeted 700,000. Is that for some of the commissions on sale?
That's just to ensure we have a baseline in case, some of that is commission-based, some of that is just, again, giving us a cushion there in case there are costs that go above and beyond. But I don't anticipate that happening, given the scope of work, but I like giving myself a little bit of
But
cushion
I mean,
there.
we signed that agreement with that amount in
Correct,
it.
correct.
Okay,
There are,
just wanted to know
like,
what,
as you mentioned, the commissions are a part of that as well, so.
okay.
Want to make
all
sure
right,
that we had
that's- Yeah,
the budget to cover that.
okay, very good.
Okay, got it covered, Linda?
Yep. Well, I guess, because I'm just wondering why we're still budgeting a lot for some of these accounts and we're not using it. Like even building maintenance, we've been budgeting quite a bit every year, but we're not using it every year. Is there a reason why we're not using it? Okay.
Yes, I can speak to that quickly. And so the theory behind what we were trying to do in all of this was make capital improvements along the way if we could. So that building fund was our capital improvements account. As we started going through the years, we also recognized the fact that we needed to have money saved for turf replacement as you're doing next year and things of that nature. So while we budgeted some funds in those accounts with the full intention of spending them in that year, as we got through and understood our cash flows and where we ended for the balance of the year, we opted not to do those projects in order to carry those funds over such that when we were ready to do a turf project, we would have it. So really, again, the way that we built this budget is probably different than some of the other departments, but every piece of the budget we fully intended to use within that year. We just wanted to understand where revenues were going to fall before we made those purchases.
I appreciate that. I just didn't want to assume. I wanted to hear you say that and explain it because, you know, someone else might look, you know, and that's why I marked that because normally you'd look at that and go, what? So that's why I'm asking. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, you good, Linda? Mm-hmm. Okay, Jill, Doug, anything? Okay, with that being concluded, I will make a motion to approve the Grant Park budget pending final approval of those positions and the associated pay for those positions by the city council.
I second.
Okay, comments, questions, commission members?
So we're voting on the budget, including the 2 additional hires?
We're basically
Pending.
approving the
Okay.
budget he requested pending approval by the council of the manpower associated costs, you know, 5%, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever they finally decide about.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. John, would you take roll call, please?
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
No.
Linda Nass.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4-1.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Matt, for all your work on that. I know it's been a long slog. Okay, next item on the agenda is the one we added for the resolution 13-2022. John, if you would, please.
Well, Joe, I think we want to
What's
cover
that?
the
Yeah.
TIF, I think we want to cover the EDA budgets.
Oh.
Remember,
The RDC budget,
we
yeah.
paused that conversation during the overlapping so that we could
Okay.
get those folks through that process. Again, I sent the email that I believe answered most of the questions that were outstanding at that time.
Right, for the
that
RDC
everybody had
budget.
sent. In addition, as stated during the overlapping taxing units presentation, the core changes to the budget from the 22 to the 23 are specifically at your request for services, so that we were trying to at least better estimate the demand for services from each of the EDAs. And that was one of the constants that each of you, in fact, I think everybody actually mentioned that, so that there was a question about why it went up. And that was per the request of this group.
Now, one thing I have asked John to do in light of passing the Grand Park budget and in dealing with our own budget is that he will then take those figures, assuming we approve it, and then he will give us that 5-year projection that you've seen on prior spreadsheets, incorporating the numbers that we now know are factual. And we really can't do too much with Grand Park until we get the decision from the council.
Great point. Yeah, we being the city, you, Matt, and Greg, FSG,
Yeah.
will all kind of gather that information, and we'll go in and update that sustainability plan.
Right.
And then I will bring that back after we have the final set of approvals, so that we will have real estimate. We'll have better estimates.
Yeah.
How's that?
Real as they could be.
Yeah, it'll be a better estimate at that point.
What's gonna happen with the
We'll know
economy.
what type of effect the healthcare and employee expenses will have long-term.
Okay, with the packet that John has given us, and obviously he's got each EDA area identified in all of the budget items for 2023 and where we stand through August 31st, are there any questions for John in regards to the information he's provided?
I have some questions on the TIF services, okay?
Uh-huh.
Because yes, we all knew we were going over TIF services budget this year. However, when I looked at the information that you sent out, what you're charging on these TIF services, we currently have TIF services budgeted in seven TIF districts. Last year, the budget was, or this year, I should say, 2022, the budget was $68,500. You're projecting next year $157,500. That's an increase of $89,000. That's on 7 TIFs. And these all have a life of like 25 years. So on 7 TIFs, we could spend as much as, $4 million on TIF services on just 7. We have 24 TIFs. We're growing. We're going to start getting revenues in more of these. And it just seems like, we could have put a big number in there to say we're not going to go over budget, but I'm just wondering, is that a really well-looked-at, calculated number? Because $157,500 seems like an awful lot for 23.
Okay, I need to break down what you just asked me.
Okay.
So, yes, I do have over $100,000 in there for next year.
$157,500.
Yes, I do have that. There is the potential of some deals on the horizon. So I'm estimating that. That's what I was asked to do. That is for next year, based on what I know right now. You can, what I think I heard was we're gonna have that going forward. 24, it may go back down to 50,000 across all of them. Right now, given what I know right now, that's my number.
And we don't have, we're
Right
not
now.
privy to those,
exactly.
why we think it's going from 68.5 up 89,000 to 157,500.
It's a good thing, right? I mean, obviously.
It's a good thing?
It's a good thing. Well, it means that we've got opportunities that we're gonna have to research.
New TIF districts,
No, we can't.
new
so-
projects.
Those are all fair questions.
It's a considerable increase.
Well, but as John said, there's a reason for it, and the reason for it is a good one from the sense that those services will be needed.
These aren't legal services, though.
No.
So, right.
These
So-
are TIF services, like
Right
normally in
now-
the OW Crone bill.
Right now, that's what you're seeing. As soon as we get as soon as other things get passed, I will come back and update this again.
And the projections are based on confidential communications that are
That
not
who's
to be
privy to?
shared.
Could we not have had an executive session or something and talk?
No, because they're not.
They're all what-ifs, Linda, basically.
Correct.
Until you
I
get,
get
until you get
what-ifs.
to the
At the
point where
appropriate
it's-
time, it'll be presented to you and to the entire commission in executive session and publicly. But for now, because they're competitive and confidential in nature, that's not an appropriate time to get them outside of really any scenario, even in executive session. Because there's nothing concrete to present at this point.
Okay, but who has looked at these things? And, I mean, evidently you think it's worth us passing 157,500 on TIF services. Or are you saying they could all fall away and we not need any of it?
They could fall away and we don't spend 57,000 of it.
At this point, I'm got my fingers crossed, yes. Yeah, well, thank you, sir. I got my fingers crossed. I'm between a rock and a hard place.
No, you can't, John. I'm telling you
Okay.
right now. I'll remove you from the
Okay,
hard
thank you.
place. I don't want you to talk
It's a
about
what
it.
if budget.
Okay.
The issue is, it's a budgeted amount that might be necessary or
I'm
might
not
not
picking
be.
nits, I just wanted to know why such a huge
projection based on expectations.
We didn't know what it was.
Trust that those expectations are correct.
Doug, we didn't know what it was based on, that's what I'm asking, what is this based on? And finally,
You want to go
he,
into executive session to find out.
no, I'm just,
Yeah, you asked.
Yeah, you asked.
yes, I did ask, because that's
Let's
a
move-
it's a
let's move beyond that.
possibility to do that.
Let's move beyond
Yeah,
that.
we need to move on.
Well,
Any
we
other
could
questions?
approve 200,000, we could approve whatever we want then. Okay, but we're trusting that you and Jim Treat or someone have sat down and calculated this all out with the hours. That's what I want to know, how you came up with this number, and it's just simple to answer it, thank you.
And I,
Yeah, and John's given us the best answer he can give us. We need to move on. Okay, anything else, John, you want to add?
I think that I want to make sure that, and Linda pointed out, or Bob, one of you, pointed out that the projects, and I wasn't thinking that people are listening, not looking at what I'm looking at.
Right.
The projects, I've got a list of a dozen more that I could have put on here, but in all frankness, I couldn't find the illustrations. And so I really, these are the top ones right now. They're the most likely ones. And they also had illustrations, and that's the reason they're in the presentation. But there are others that are potential and could be added to this list.
But again, it depends on the financing, the MPO
It
request,
does,
or
and
how,
the
rest of the mechanisms that we could use to finance those
yes,
projects.
And in the past, you all have been, very cooperative in the fact that a lot of this is pretty fluid, and I appreciate that cooperation. Sometimes we are spot on, we're gonna do something, and it changes. And
Absolutely.
that.
Priorities change.
Or to your point, the financing actually changed.
Right.
It didn't happen like we thought it was gonna happen.
Sure.
So I just want to set everybody's expectations so that I'm not, or we're not being measured by, well, why didn't we do that project? Why didn't we start that project? Or what? Something may have changed. I will try to make sure I'm communicating that. Please ask, for
As they go
updates,
along.
and I will do that. But I just don't want to misrepresent that this is where we're going immediately. I do not want to misrepresent that. That's the only other thing I'd like to add, Joe.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that because, the numbers that we saw in TIF didn't necessarily match those few projects. And so I just wanted an explanation. And this is the first that you're telling us, that you have, there's things on the horizon, or there's things on the burner, there's things considered. I couldn't guess that or assume that from reading this. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I would
Okay.
hope that John comes forward next year with a 250 budget instead of a 50 budget, because right now the well is dry, thanks to the environment we're living in. But we'll move on. Okay, any other questions for John on the packet he's provided for us? Okay, if not, I'm open for a motion for approval of the RDC budget for 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion Jill Doyle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Doug Holtz. John, if you would take roll, we have a motion on the floor for approval of the budget.
Joe Plankus,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Linda Nass.
Aye.
Thank
Okay,
you.
approval 5-0. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 13-2022. John, if you would, explain why all of a sudden we needed to do this.
Well, this is a housekeeping, frankly. When we posted the dollars that we received on the land sale for the Union Square project, I had requested that the clerk post those into an account that was incorrect. So what we're doing in this resolution is we're going to put those, if you pass this resolution, we will move those dollars to the correct fund in the general, basically, I believe they'll go to the general fund. But that's what this is. I had requested specifically, because of the relation to the project, that they go to that fund. I think it was 372, 327.
327.
Something like that, yeah. So this will correct that.
And may I just ask, there wasn't an error on the balance of that land sale, what was it, $230,000?
We have that check.
That check came in
That check
today,
arrived,
and that will be given to the
that will be
clerk.
put in the.
It will be put in the correct account, we
Exactly.
won't need the housekeeping.
So all those funds will be in the right place, Linda.
Yeah, yeah, well, I just,
Yep, no,
because this is just for the
fair question.
550.
This
Yeah,
is
this is
housekeeping.
just part of it. Yep, just
Yep.
part of it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions for John? If not, I move that we approve Resolution 13-2022. Do I have a second?
I second it, Linda Nass.
Second by Linda Nass. John, roll call, please.
Linda Nass,
Aye.
Bob Beaudry,
Aye.
Jill Doyle,
Aye.
Doug Holtz,
Aye.
Joe Plankus.
Aye. Okay, don't go away because I have the resolution that we can all sign
Sign.
since we're all here. Any other items for additional business this evening? Got a lot done.
I do not have any.
Okay, very good. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved by Bob Beaudry. Joe Plankus, second that. Voice vote, all in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Doug, if you'll sign that, give it to Jill, and